Hello and welcome to the world's worst movie theater in the world. It's ugly, it's disgusting, we have no reason to be here, but considering how I started this show off last year by taking a look at my top 30 favorite movies of all time, I figure why not go to a place that's the complete opposite of the theater I took you guys to the last time we talked about those favorite movies in particular, because we're going to talk about, for the next 30 weeks, my top 30 worst movies of all time. And I figured why not do this, because I want to talk about the most despising and the most detestable motion pictures I've ever had to sit through. These are movies that are some of the most painful and excruciating cinematic experiences I have ever had. Now let me set some ground rules up. The 30 films being listed here are the utter shit that I've had the misfortune of sitting through. These are movies that are so unbearable and so watchable, so unwatchable that I regret ever seeing them. And unfortunately, movies that I've had that are so bad or good, like United Passions or The Day After Tomorrow, are not included on this list. And I'm not even going to go into movies that I knew were going to be bad from the get-go, like Big Mama's Like Father Like Son or Zoolander 2. Like, that doesn't mean that they're horrible movies, but these are the 30 movies that I went in expecting some kind of expectations from, something to be enjoyed from them, and didn't get any of that at all. So, without further ado, welcome to the Reviewing Network's top 30 worst movies of all time. And why don't we start off with a comedy sequel that is a sequel to one of my favorite movies of all time. And that is number 30 on my list, which is a movie that just seems like a bad idea from the beginning, but you had to give it the benefit of the doubt because of the movie that came before it. And I'm, of course, talking about Blues Brothers 2000. Yeah. In this movie, Elwood, once again played by Dan Aykroyd, is now the lone blues brother, finally released from prison, and is once again enlisted by Sister Mary Stigmata, played by Kathleen Turner, in her latest crusade to raise funds for a children's hospital. Once again hitting the road to reunite the band and win the big prize at the New Orleans Battle of the Bands, Elwood is pursued cross-country by the cops led by Cable, played by Joe Morton, Curtis's son and Elwood's stepbrother, the Russian Mafia, and a militia group. On his new mission from God, Elwood enlists the help of a young orphan and a strip club bartender played by John Goodman. I said Kathleen Turner was the Sister Mary Stigmata, but that's Kathleen Friedman, I'm sorry. Even though Kathleen Turner was in a sequel, in a comedy sequel that wasn't as good as the original, Dumb and Dumber 2, but we're not going to talk about that on here. But so I wanted to get that right. It's not Kathleen Turner or Sister Mary Stigmata, it's Kathleen Friedman. And I mean, honestly, if you saw the Nostalgia Critics review, he perfectly summed it up with the most recurring joke in the review, and that is, you've got no plot, you've got no comedy, you don't even have the original Blues Brothers, so what the hell are we even doing here? Half of the stuff that they do in this movie is just baffling, and I mean baffling. It really does not feel like a Blues Brothers movie at all. The one thing I will give it credit for is John Goodman. I give him credit for filling some pretty big shoes. You know, he has to fill in for a role that was done by the late, great John Belushi, and as the other Blues Brother and in performances with Dan Aykroyd, he works fine. But in this movie, there is absolutely no reason for some of the decisions they do here. In the 18 years since the original film, they just decided to do nothing with this at all. There's no excuse for this to be as bad as it is, because you have Dan Aykroyd returning for this as both the star and the writer. John Landis is back as the director and the co-writer. You have Paul Shaffer as the main composer and some pretty damn good music that's the only saving grace of the film. And the decisions that they do is just, it's insane and out of place for a Blues Brothers film. Like, the ending of the movie is even off, too. It's just like, the original ended on one of the greatest car chases and police chases ever brought to film. You still remember that over 40 years after that movie came out. And this one just ends with, yep, that's life, folks. And then it doesn't even give you a real climax. The movie literally ends with the blues, with Dan Aykroyd, with Elwood basically performing the concert. He's got the kid in the car, and you see the police cars coming after him. You think that, okay, this is going to lead into another climax just like the end of the first movie. And then Dan Aykroyd goes, put on your seatbelt, kid. And then the movie just ends. The movie just ends like that. This is unbelievably bad. Like, you could say whatever you want about some of the other bad Saturday Night Live movies, like It's Pat, but there was at least some effort being put into making a movie. It wasn't a great effort, but at least they were trying. This, besides the soundtrack and John Goodman, have absolutely nothing to work with here. And not only that, it's a bad comedy sequel that seemed more like it was being aimed for the younger audiences too, with its PG-13 rating. And it's just like, the original was rated R, you guys. Because we've had that amazing track record of R-rated movies with PG-13 sequels. It happens once in a while. Once in a while. But not all the time. Like, this whole movie doesn't just go down in history as the second worst Saturday Night Live movie ever made, but it's one of the single worst sequels ever produced. It's that bad, people. There's no story, no reason to bring the characters back, no reason for this to exist except because of name recognition. It's wasted potential gone down the tubes. There is nothing here. Avoid this one like the plague. Avoid this one like there's no tomorrow. Blues Brothers 2000, the 30th worst movie I have ever seen in my entire life. And John Landis, he's not done on this list just yet, because coming up on next week's episode here, he is involved in another terrible comedy sequel that he's been involved in. But we'll save that for next week. But if you want to go ahead and check out the last video I did, which was about Francis Ford Coppola's movies of the 1980s, go ahead and leave the link to that there. You can also check out some of the other videos I've done. So, starting the year off on a high note, if you will, or a low note, if you will. So, join me back here next week for number 29 on my list of my top 30 worst movies of all time. See you guys.